Hi, everyone. I'm here to conduct a webinar on administering Issuetrak. This is going to be a deep dive into user and group management. It's going to discuss how we actually use users and groups, how we manage them, and give you a few tricks and tips for you to use. Well, let's kind of begin with a little housekeeping. So who am I? My name is Mike Wright. I am a senior product engineer at Issuetrak. I've been with Issuetrak longer than software's been around, so I've got about 10 years in support and about 10 years or more actually working with training and configuring the sites. So I predate the software, and so I'm going to try to give you some of my experience and let you know some of the things that I do when I'm trying to work with users and groups within Issuetrak. So let's go ahead and kind of get started. First off, again, what we're going to really be talking about is talking about the people that can go ahead and make modifications to users and groups in Issuetrak. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about additions, editing, deleting, and modifying all groups and user records. And I'm going to throw a few best practices in also. Some of the tricks and tips that Paul's and I use and share with one of the customers when we work one-on-one, and some of our jumpstart on-site or tune-up sessions that we provide for our customers. Another thing here, for the most part, I'm speaking to our site administrators and our system administrators. They're the people who have full capability to update records within Issuetrak. So what they can do is they can, again, do add, edit, and deletes. So they have those permissions. They can add, edit, and delete and modify all users and group records. So by having those permissions to administrate, they kind of get those by default. So let's take a look at something else. Another role within Issuetrak is an organizational user administrator. Now, some of you have been with Issuetrak for a while. Of course, I've been around for a long time. We used to have a user parameter called organizational administrator. And this is mostly in the 9.9 versions and previous to Issuetrak. Well, that had a lot of capabilities in it. And we decided to remove that from the product for a while. And then from some feedback from some of our customers, we brought it back, but then we really thought about what it needed to do and made it really fit the needs of our customers. So the permission that this particular user has is can access and maintain users in this user's organization and its additional organization. That means that the organization that that user belongs to. So you can give this permission to a user in a customer organization, and they can add users or modify their own users in their organization only. If they happen to have, that organization has to have some subsidiary organizations, we call them additional organizations, then they can also manage those additional organizations that are below them. So that gives them good flexibility. Now, and thing about this is not an agent permission. This is an end user permission. So you do not even have to be an agent user to do this particular management if you need to. Now, what can they do? Oh, let me go back. They can edit and add users associated with their organization and any organization below. They may add users to groups that are created by system and site administrators. So what this means is they can't go in and change individual permissions on the user profile. They can't do that. They can only add users to pre-established groups that are in there. That prevents them from granting permissions that are greater than their own. It also makes the parent organization, the company that owns the site, have total control over what permissions they're going to allow those users to see. And because you can have a group associated with different organizations, you can have different capabilities being granted for one customer than you can for another customer, because they're not going to be able to see the groups from other customers. So it gives you a lot of flexibility here. Now, so remember, once they belong to that group, they can't change that user's permissions because it's not individual. So administrators can manage users. So let's take a look at what that means. Those users that can be manually added, they can clone existing users, they can update and delete existing user records depending on the settings of the site. They can go into settings and make a user inactive. Sometimes we need to do that when people are gone or leave the company. They can promote users to agents or system administrators by changing their permissions, provided they have system administrative permissions. They update and grant permissions to users, add users to groups, and remove users from groups. So let's take a look at that from a site perspective. In this particular site, then this is CS training that we use. In this particular site, you go to administration, you go to users, and when you go to users, you'll land on the summary page where you can add a brand new user on the left-hand sub-menu. First thing you do with a user record is you want to know what type of user, and I'm going to speak a little bit more to both type and user type. Record type first is going to be a user or template. So we don't want to create templates unless you're working with system settings and you need to use that template to create a user from IAM or from Active Directory. Most of the time you're going to be working with user records. The type of user is going to be an agent or an end user. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit later on those type of it and get into those specifics. For the most part, you'll be dealing with end users and not agent users. User IDs will need to be added. You can just put in whatever you want that user ID to log in under. It just cannot contain spaces, special characters also. First name, last name, and the display name will be built based off the first name and last name settings within the system settings of Issuetrak. So first name last name first, that'll be what the display name is built to. You can decide whether you want to log in or not. Some users are created, but they're not given the ability to log in. They just need to be selected as submitters or selected as assignees, usually submitters. Phone and email. Phone is display only. You must have an email address if you want to receive email from Issuetrak. And the mobile SMS gives you that capability for you to go in and modify or change or actually receive text emails from Issuetrak. We actually have a hint section in here. You must belong to an organization, a department. Locations are optional. Some users will not even see that. And of course, you must set a time zone. Address information, and then you'll have your permissions, your groups, and all the permissions that you will allow to use it to go home. Now, many times what happens is, remember, that's just a user add. So I'm going in and adding it. Sometimes what you'll end up doing is you'll go in here and let's say I'm going to go and pick on the admin account here. If I needed to create a second admin account, then I can clone that account. When I clone that account, it creates a clone of that particular account, specifically the information below, group memberships that it belongs to, and the settings already set. Now, you'll also notice in here that none of the type information is in here. So again, if I'm cloning the account, mostly what I'm doing is going ahead and updating this top section without having to do any modification at the bottom. So if you're manually adding users, it's very simple to do. Now I'm going to go back to list all and I'm going to pick on the admin account again. A couple of things I want to point out. In the admin account, this is a system administrator account. And in that system administrator account, it has a couple of different permissions, and one is called sysadmin. So if this account is a system administrator in this site, I have to be logged in under a system administrator to be able to check this box. If not, I cannot check it. So you have to be a sysadmin before you can grant a sysadmin permission. So that's one of the things that you'll look out for. Now, so you have the capability of going and modifying those things. You can change a password for a user if password change has been enabled. So if you have admin permissions, you can change the password of that user. And when you go to change password, one of the things that you can want to look out for is this capability to actually authorize it. Remember, this is going to be the password that's been added. This is going to be the password that's retyped, and then the current password. Now, if this account had an email address in it, you will have another option down here to send an email out to the user and let them set their own password. That is the preferable way to reset passwords. The last thing administrators want to do is to go in and change passwords for users. So let them set their own. If a user goes to the login page and they know their user ID, they can click on Forgot Reset Password. That will send them an email, and then they can reset their own password. So that's something to keep in mind as an administrator. Don't get bogged down in changing passwords if you don't have to. So go ahead and use the email capability whenever possible. So that's how users will mostly be added when you're looking at a non-Active Directory site. This site is not set up with Active Directory. I didn't enable it here. Active Directory will take over a lot of that particular capability of adding users or modifying the user records. So Active Directory will do that automated. That can be another discussion for another day. But just say that if you have an Active Directory, if you log into a site and you have not had a user created for you, the Active Directory will go ahead and bring that user over and add them. And I'll talk a little bit about Active Directory in relation to groups, because most of your management with those accounts is going to be through groups. So let's talk a little bit more. Oops, went too far. So let's get back to where we were. Put me back in presentation mode and get a little smaller. Now let's see if we can correct this little problem I had. Click the wrong button. So here we are. Make it a little smaller so I can move back and forth. We'll go through a couple of pages here and get back to where we were sitting. The main thing I want to talk about next is going to be the type of users, and we talked about it a little bit as I was going through that user add page. We're going to talk about the types, which are going to be agent users and end users. So users and Issuetrak, basic user types. An agent takes a license with Issuetrak. If you're an agent account, then you're going to consume a license. That's because you have the following permissions. You may assign an issue to another agent user, may be assigned to an issue, may assign a next action to a user, or may be assigned a next action. You may submit an issue on someone else's behalf. You can modify and change administration settings, and you can possess the system administration parameter. Those are the ones in the agent block underneath the permissions when you look at a user profile. Now, I want to speak a little bit about this. There are actually two different license models within Issuetrak. The support model, which we're looking at right now, has agents and end users. So users who support others. Both agents and end users both can log into Issuetrak. So in this particular case, everybody doesn't always have to have a license. An end user is a user who doesn't need a license to use Issuetrak, and they have any permission that is not an agent permission. So it gives them a lot of flexibility to use the site and a lot of flexibility to submit issues and work with issues. So you have some capabilities that are not licensed. Now, there's also what we call a team model, and some of you may be in a team model. In that case, there is no such thing as end users. Every user is licensed as an agent, which means you're not supporting others, you're doing more internal work. For example, you're an office, you only have 10 people. You want everybody to be assigned to an issue. So we want to go ahead and give you the ability to make everybody an agent. So that's the team model. If you need additional information on that, I'd say go ahead and talk or discuss that capability within your sales engineers and let them discuss your particular model and how yours is set up. But in most cases, most of your set up in the support model where you have agents who support others. Now, that's important to understand because you're only going to be able to increase your agent count to the limits of your license. So if you have a 10 or 100 user license, you're only going to have 10 users that are agents or 100 users that are agents. You can't have any more. If you're in a support model, however, there is no limit to the number of end users you can have. So, basic issue roles. What happens is within Issuetrak, you have roles in the issue as well as being a user type. Now, basic things within Issuetrak are essentially the enterer, the person who is inputting the data. So I call them the person with the hands on the keyboard. They're the person who is actually putting the data in, whether it's their data or someone else's. The submitter is the user who's reporting the issue or who the issue is all about. That's the contact person for that issue. So they may be the person who emailed it in. They may be the person who went to the website and submitted the issue. If they are in that case, they're both the enterer and the submitter because they entered it, because their hands on the keyboard, and they submitted the issue. It's important to understand that so you can understand how emails are going to be sent to you. The assignee is the agent user who is responsible to respond and resolve the issue. That's who you're sending it to. They may pass it on to other agents. They may respond and close the issue themselves, but they're the responsible personnel. Sometimes it's going to be a user, sometimes it's going to be a group, but it's still going to be the assignee. The next action. Some sites have enabled an optional feature called next action. And in the next action capability, that agent user can be assigned to a particular issue as well as an assignee. Sometimes you're past the issue from person to person through the next action. Sometimes two people will hold the issue together. One will be the primary assignee, one will be the secondary. Sometimes you'll assign it to the group and then you'll next action to a user. That allows all the members of the group to view or be have access to that issue, but the primary responsibility is really on the next action side. It depends on how you're set up and how you're going to use the software. A task assignee. A task assignee is a user. They're not an agent. They have been assigned to complete a task on the issue. In many cases, this is a work process item. It may be people outside of into another department. They can be all different types of people that are going to be involved as a next action. Now, member of an email distribution list. In certain situations, members of email distribution lists have access to the issues also. They can view the issue, they can add a note. So all they are is members of an email distribution list. There are some settings involved with that to allow them to be able to update the note, but in general, they'll be able to view the issue if they have that setting involved. Project members. Project members are also allowed to view issues. Now, it can be a project member or a member of the project email distribution list. Both of them are allowed to see the actual issue. So they can go in and see that issue and see what's going on with that issue. So that gives them access. Now, it's important to understand access because it helps you understand what permissions and what parameters you need to manage a little bit later. Some of these access, again, are done through groups, but they still follow the same roles. Next, group types, purpose and function. I kind of look at groups as two different types. First, permission types groups. Permission types groups are groups that grant permissions to users, and I kind of follow roles a little bit with that. What's your role in the company, or what's your role in the purpose of the site? Are you an agent? Are you an administrator? Are you a particular department group user or a particular group user? So I'll create a group that can be assigned to those issues according to those different roles that they're going to have in resolving that issue. Those permissions then will be set by the roles that they inhabit. An agent has a different permission from an end user. A person who belongs to, say, the facilities department may have a little bit different set of permissions than either an agent user or an end user. So it depends on whether they flux. And remember, people can belong to more than one group. So when they belong to more than one group, it combines all the permissions together in order to give them essentially a profile. So people can belong to 10 groups. It's not exclusive, it's all inclusive. So it's a combination of all, is what you're looking at. So functional type groups. Functional type groups a lot of times don't need a lot of permissions. There are things like this, an assignment group. Well, an assignment group says, okay, we'll give them my issues because every group needs that, every user needs that. Can be assigned, can be assigned, can be a next action. Maybe that's all the permissions that they need. Can be assigned tasks. Well, they're all assignment roles within Issuetrak. I can assign an issue to someone, I can next action an issue to someone, I can task an issue to someone. I don't want to interfere with all the other permissions groups that we did according to their role in the site. I just need to use this group to assign issues to the members of the group. So I don't want to include a lot of extra permissions. An email distribution list. Well, an email distribution list is just used to send emails based off some criteria, organization, department, type, priority, whatever it happens to be. The only permission that group needs is my issues. They don't need anything else. If we do that, again, we are including information we may not need because of their role in the issue. So one permission is all they need. Same thing with restriction groups. They only need one permission, my issues. So you give them that permission, then I can go ahead and use that group to restrict access to quick picks. I can restrict access to knowledge-based articles and restrict access to subtypes and types. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in order to set the site up without having to add a lot of layers to the groups. That way, when you need to go in and check the permissions or see where permissions came from, you know to look for those permission groups and every once in a while, a permission on a user profile. Now, just to mention that, I do not recommend adding very many permissions at all at the user level. So if you're using Active Directory, you can't do it anyway. If you are not using Active Directory, you can update a permission on a particular user profile, and that can kind of interfere with what you're doing with the individual user groups. So I like to keep all permissions on groups, even if it's just one permission. It's because it makes sure that all the permissions are being granted by my permissions type groups and not anywhere else. So it makes it easier to manage and change and modify. So it's kind of another best practice that we use. So again, best practice for users and groups: limit permissions granted to users to only my issues, as I said on there. Your users don't need a lot of permissions. Go ahead and give them my issues, then make them a member of a group. All the permissions come from the group, not from the individual user. That's what I was just speaking to. Add users to groups to grant permissions. Again, repeating what I just said, going ahead and adding those users to the groups, that gives them the permissions. Remember, if you clone a user, the group memberships are going to come over also. Users can belong to more than one group to get permissions from all. Templates may be members of groups. That's important. What I end up doing with Active Directory is set up so that when you log into Issuetrak, you have a template that's associated with one of the Active Directory groups you belong to. One of the groups is called users, for example. In users, I'll go ahead and I'll say, if you belong to the users group, you get the end user permissions. Therefore, the template, all I need to do is take the template and make it a member of the end user group within Issuetrak. When these users are brought in, they're going to become member of that end user group, which means from that point forward, I can manage all of those users that are imported through Active Directory by modifying the end user group in Issuetrak. I don't need to worry about individual user accounts. I don't need to deal with the template at all. Everything is coming from the group membership, again, making things easy to manage. And then using good naming conventions. You can really get messed up on some of the naming conventions you use. I like to have good naming conventions. Sometimes even for permissions groups, I'll put underscores in front of them because I want them to be at the top of the list. Because I'm dealing with changes to permissions, I want them separate from the functional groups that are below. It just depends on what you want. Just use good naming conventions, both for the group names and for the IDs. So, tips on using groups. Sometimes what I end up doing is I'll set up a site to use groups for all the assignments. I don't assign issues to a particular person, I assign it to a group. And the group sometimes represents a position they hold at a particular company: CEO, CFO, CIO, VP of finance. It could be supervisor or manager. What that means is that if I have change at the organizational level, we have a person being promoted or leave us or whatever happens, I don't need to go in and make a lot of modifications and changes to task groups or to assignments or quick picks. All I have to do is change the group, the user, from one person to another. Not only will they go ahead and be able to see the issues that they are going to be assigned to in the future, they also get access to all those issues that were assigned to that person who held that permission in the past. So making it changeover or very, very quick and easy to do. Use a group to allow users to update some issues with notes, but not allow them to update the issue. What I'm talking about here is the ability to become a member of an email distribution list. When you put a user on an email distribution list, it can give them access to the issue, and the access is limited to only being able to add a note to the issue. Managers, supervisors, CIO, COO, some of those users, they need access to see issues in a particular area, but not necessarily need to be able to edit or change the issue, just be able to add a comment or a note. So adding that in groups is a lot of times something that's very easy to do, easy to manage, and very visible. So it gives you that ability to see issues, update them with notes, but not necessarily make changes to the individual issues. Some final thoughts. So I've talked a lot about different things within Issuetrak, but of course, every site is different, every usage is different, and it's very difficult to talk in specifics when you're trying to talk to a broad variety of users that are here. So the comments that I've made today are very specific and very broad, generalities, if you want to call them that. So if you need specific help or specific information, contact our PS team. Paul and myself will be happy to talk to you, talk about your specifics, your particular challenges that you have with your site, how you need to set things up. We're happy to help. That's part of what we do. So go ahead and contact your sales engineer. They'll arrange time with us. If you have a simple question and you think the support team can handle it, by all means, go ahead and contact the support team. If it's something they can't handle, they're going to turn to us anyway. So go ahead and contact them and go through the first level. They'll be happy to help us if something comes up that's a little bit tricky. So that's kind of it for this particular session, this web session. I want to thank you all for attending today, and hopefully you found some good information in here. And until next time, this is Mike Wright. Good day.